The Hurricanes wrapped up their second fall practice today, and it looked much of the same as what we were able to see from the first day, in that they weren't in full pads, they were just in shorts and jerseys. And then also we were able to see about 20 minutes of drills, which was the same as the day before. I know on the video I said close to 40, but look, it was about 20. And the same was, we were only able to film about 10 minutes of just the stretching. And I know you guys saw the video and maybe a little disappointed, but just to kind of explain a little bit more about what we're doing in terms of the access. So things have changed. We just not have been able to, film the drills like normal, and not able to show you guys what it looks like position-wise and really show you much of the players. I can show you the stretching. I'll continue to do so. Maybe you guys like that, and I'm gonna hope for the best moving forward, but I'm not very optimistic, to be honest with you. It doesn't look like, if I were to guess, it doesn't look like we'll be able to show you position drills from the media, so you're just not gonna see a lot of content. Maybe UM sends us some stuff. I don't know, they haven't done so yet, but I'd like to show you even more. I'm glad I'm able to be out there, and on these videos to recap practices, I'm just gonna be more detailed. I'm gonna try to be more detailed. I'm gonna go into it a little bit more and really be able to report on what I see if I'm not able to show you the things that I see. So I'm gonna try to be better at these videos, but I definitely wanna thank everybody for their support watching these kind of videos. What I was able to see today, and there's a few things, but I wanna start first with the offensive line. So there was a drill where they were, basically a guy was lined up, basically as a one-on-one, offensive line versus a linebacker. The player, the offensive lineman would be in that stance, and the linebacker would be a few yards off the line of scrimmage. Almost looked like a center type situation, but only the centers would hike the ball. And then on go, they would go. And essentially the offensive line had to get a certain spot, and the linebackers are obviously trying to get around them. Obviously, the linebackers have the advantage with their speed and quickness compared to an offensive lineman, but it's really good for an O-lineman to engage with those guys, and also it's good for the linebackers to really, get underneath, really set their edge or set their feet well and really try to get by the offensive lineman. And I'm bringing this up because that's what I saw. And Javion Cohen, and I wanted to talk about him, and I thought he looked very good in these kind of drills, just really getting out there, creating contact at the point of attack there. And with Javion, he was one of 3 Hurricanes who were named preseason All-ACC there at left guard, and then also safety Cam Kitchens and kicker Andres Borregales are the other 2 guys. But with Javion, him at left guard, I don't know if it's really been discussed enough, but I think he's going to be Miami's best guard since Brandon Linder was last here in 2013. Also, just with Javion, the way it looks, the way he's being projected, he could be an NFL draft pick. Certainly in 2024, it looks that way with what he's done at Alabama, and I expect him to have a great season at Miami. But he would be Miami's first offensive lineman drafted since Danny Isidora in 2017. So it's been a few years for the Hurricanes to have an offensive lineman drafted, certainly too long. And even with Isidora, it was a 5th round pick. So, I think it goes without question that Cohen could be Miami's best offensive lineman really since, those years with Linder and those guys. I know Feliciano came after, certainly a good player as well. Sean Trell was a good player. It's just kind of crazy thinking about that offensive line together with Eric Flowers was with that group. And Miami's looking to have a strong offensive line this year. Obviously, Cristobal and Mirabal have had success with their offensive lines in years past, but you get Cohen in here, who I think, one thing that with Cohen that I find interesting, we always focus a lot on the tackles, what the tackles are able to do. And even with center, Matt Lee, you guys have heard me speak about Matt Lee. I think he's going to have a good year for Miami as well. Could be a, potential drafted guy as also. But I think at the guard spot, when you have good guard play, I think it really helps both in running the ball to be able to pull these guys and really either set edges or create lanes up the middle. You can just do a lot with a good guard, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how Cohen really fits into this offensive line. Really productive. Guys have been solid. I think Jalen Rivers, we've seen him recently be solid at guard and things like that. We've seen guys be solid, but I just think that upper echelon type guy that Cohen, I think, will be at Miami, I think that's going to certainly help the offense. And then obviously he can help with pass protection as well. So I just think that versatility there at the left side, I think it's going to be good for the offensive line. I'm not sure, certainly he's got the attention now with these honors, with what he did at Alabama, but I'm not sure if everyone is really concentrated on how much impact that Cohen can really make for this offensive line. So I expect him to do that. And certainly we're talking about the young guys as well also. So maybe just, I think in a little sense, maybe Cohen's not getting enough attention. I think it's just going to be big for this team on the offensive line. And also with those drills, I want to mention that one-on-one thing with the linebackers. You know, it was just kind of good watching a guy like KJ Cloyd, who I know Miami is really intrigued by. He was primarily a special teams guy at Louisville, but certainly I think he could win a starting job in fall camp. And I thought he did a good job just, again, on these limited reps that we're able to see, really getting his foot in the ground and really kind of turning the corner, showing his athleticism. You know, Coach Nicholson talked about his speed. He really likes KJ's speed. Really feels like he could be a guy that it started to click a little bit late last season at Louisville and thinks it's going to click even more maybe now, and we'll see how that goes. But certainly Cloyd's in that battle. I'm curious to see how things are kind of going with that. But Cloyd's a guy that could really blossom with this defense, and also just another year under his belt. Coach Nicholson also mentioned he's a former defensive end in high school, went the JUCO route, so maybe it's just taking a little bit longer for Cloyd to develop, and certainly he's got an opportunity. Another thing, and it was a comment on the channel on the last video that I did, somebody asked about the size of the players, and I noted that there are a few positions you'll see a little bit more size, particularly offensive line and linebacker if they have Cloyd in there as one of the top guys, and also Francisco Mauino if he's in there in the middle spot. Those are going to be a little bit bigger than what they had last year. You lose a little bit of size with Daryl Jackson moving on to Florida State at defensive tackle, whoever Miami decides to put in there at D tackle, which I think will be Branson Dean, just not quite as big as Daryl. Miami just doesn't have a player like that with that size that they'll put in there. So, some spots a little bit bigger, some spots not, but certainly overall it'll just be one of those things to kind of monitor. I think defensive backs, certainly at corner, you can see, again, with the size, Miami did have big corners last year. Stevenson with his bulk, and obviously with Ivy with his length, 2 drafted corners. Miami doesn't have those guys necessarily that they'll play on the outside. But certainly, bringing in Devontae Brown has good size, his younger brother, Damari, as well. So I just slide down a little bit because they're cutting the grass. The grounds crew is working at Cobb Stadium right now. I can hear a lot of noises. Hopefully it's not too bad. I can hear the cooling tank. I got the Metro behind me, all kinds of stuff going on, but I want to get this thing done in terms of, I want to talk about the defense a little bit, start, with the secondary. Coach Guidry, when I was talking to him at Media Day, he was talking about each position group, about how many players you play at each position, and I find an interesting battle to pay attention to, not a headlining battle, but that backup safety spot, because Guidry was saying you primarily play your top 2 safeties most of the game, and that's going to be Kitchens and James Williams. So basically, who's going to be that number 3 guy to spell those 2 when needed? That battle right now is between Jaden Harris, Brian Balaam's back, and then also Markeith Williams, who missed the first day of practice but was out here for day 2. So we'll see how things kind of transpire with that. But I do want to note, with James, we talked about it, and I know there's been a lot of speculation, and some people have wondered if he'll make a full move to linebacker, but he did say he will play some linebacker, kind of move in the box a little bit more, this year with Guidry, and feels like maybe his NFL future. He said he's around 223, which I think was the exact number that James said today. A lot of stuff going on with the information, but definitely check out InsideTheU for more, the website, for a complete coverage of everything that went on. But with James, and I find it to be interesting, not that he can move down, but he's open to it. But I think to me, like a true linebacker spot is if they play a second safety. I understand they're going to play this 4-2-5 defense, but if he's kind of just moving around a little bit into more of a safety role, maybe you're going to go to one high look with Cam in the back, and it's still going to be primarily Cam and James. But I think unless James is really out there on some base defense stuff, I still obviously consider him a safety, but it's just something to watch for, that he will move around. Another thing to kind of pay attention to is Jafari Harvey, and kind of with this defense, with what they want to do, and he's called it the jack position. And basically, you're kind of going 3 down linemen, basically, and you have your 4th guy, maybe, kind of it's a 3-4 setup, basically, or kind of the way they can kind of move things around. I know it's going to look, the fronts are going to look a little bit different each time, and Guidry kind of has his own style with it. But basically, guys like Harvey, kind of can be standing up a lot more, and I feel like that's going to be good for him, not just for this year, but for his NFL future. Maybe even like if you're looking at a pass guy, maybe you're hoping to have that production, that maybe a Trent Harris type, a guy that can stand up a little bit at that end, maybe an undersized defensive end, but not quite a linebacker, a true linebacker in that sense. So Harvey's working there. Also Nigel Kelly, Cyrus Moss, and then also Jaden Wayne. But I think the battle really is going to come down to Harvey and Kelly, obviously, with those 2 guys. And basically, Harvey's got all the experience. Kelly's going to be in his 2nd year. A lot of potential there, a lot of playmaking ability, the pass rushing ability, things like that. And I think for Kelly, it's going to be all about production. And really this battle will come down to that, because if Kelly gets on the field, even if it's not as many snaps at early on in the season or even in fall camp, you know, if Harvey's not producing and Kelly is, I think you'll start to see some playing time change with that. I think that'll be certainly something to watch for, or maybe who's going to grasp and thrive in this defense more if they are expected to stand up a lot more than what they have in the past. So I think both those guys can handle it. I think both those guys can be good at it, and really you're trying to get more pass rushing out of that spot if they're not engaging on blocks where they kind of can essentially make a run at the offensive tackles, but also drop back in coverage a little bit, show their athleticism a little bit, and really not show everything. You know, I even saw, I touched on this in the spring, I saw even Ruben Bain dropping back in coverage a little bit at times. So he's in a little bit different spot, but he's just another guy that they can kind of move around, whether they want to play him inside, outside, or drop him back in coverage. So I just think some things that they have, not necessarily just what Guidry wants to do, but also with their personnel. I think there's a lot of things that they can do with this defense. You know, one of the things too I asked with Guidry on Media Day was if he feels like he's got a good sense of his personnel, and I just meant because there were some guys missing in the spring, he has added some guys in the summer, or if it's going to take him a little bit of time in the fall to really get to know these guys even better. And he just said he feels like he's got a good idea, pretty good idea with these guys. So we'll see how everything transpires. I'll have some more on that in terms of, you know, the positions, how many will play at each position on defense, essentially what he likes to do, because it all changes. You know, you're going more defensive linemen, you don't play your linebackers as much, but he actually had the exact numbers. And you can also, you know, refer back to the channel on the interview I had with Guidry. It kind of starts it out because I was the first one to talk to him. So the video will actually start talking about that a few questions in if you want to see that instead of the written form. But, you know, like I said, I appreciate everybody watching these videos. I'm going to try to be better in terms of really, you know, keeping track of details of what I see in practice, because like I said, I'm not expecting us to be able to film the drills anymore. So I'm going to be able to, you know, I really want to make sure I'm still informing you guys enough, because I know you like, you know, to know what's going on with the team. So thanks for watching. I'll still put up some videos when I can. I've got some interviews with Media Day. This is a good time to wrap it. They got the mower out. So thanks again for tuning in. Hopefully you guys understand the situation we're currently in as reporters. We're trying to cover this team. Hopefully have a good rest of the day, and take care. So I'm just getting going here, but I forgot to mention, so day 3 on Thursday, they're not going to practice, so we won't have anything out there. And then Friday, they'll be back at practice, expected to be out here. And then Saturday, they'll be on as well. So looking forward to more coverage. Again, just a little bit of update, and then they'll scrimmage for the first time next Friday. So again, I just want to provide those little updates before I forgot anything. Thanks for tuning in.